Good morning, art students. Mr. Myers, I hope you're all doing well. So this will be our final project. And again, remember we're thinking about the means of creating a successful design, so the elements and principles of art that do these things for us. Our last things that we'll be looking at are space and scale and proportion. So what we want to do to create a visual space is we can do two ways. We can either do a linear perspective or an atmospheric perspective, and I'll go more into details of those right now. So a linear perspective is when you see some sort of geometrical type drawing within a work of art. So we have something called a vanishing point, and we have these lines that are converging back, and it makes it look like we're looking into a three-dimensional space, and you're really just tricking somebody's eye. So the art of making objects and spaces to look three-dimensional. And linear perspective is what you would do for things that are linear. So there has to be some sort of geometrical shape. So what we'll do first is I'm going to have you make something that is a linear perspective. So we'll start with a horizon line, and that's this line across the back here. You have a vanishing point. So the vanishing point is this red plus sign that we see. And then converging lines, those are these lines that are converging from the shape, from the geometric shape. So there are these lines that go back to that vanishing point. And then we can just look at some one-point perspective. So it's just making like a cube, and then you have a vanishing point, horizon, and you can read this bottom part here too. But you can see like making a cube, you just make these lines go back, and these are the actual lines of the object here that are part of that those converging lines. And then we also have two-point perspective. So this can be more complicated. I wouldn't suggest going to this route. It's something that we, if we were working with each other, we in more time and instruction, we could get to this point. But there's also three-point perspective as well. So you can really make objects look like they're floating, or that you're really high above them or really far below them. So what we're gonna do, and this part will actually be in, so if you go to the Surrealism notes, so these notes here, reading through there, some ideas on linear perspective, horizon, vanishing, converging points. So those are already defined for you. But what I want you to do is to draw these three shapes, and then draw a horizon line with the vanishing point. So, so if we go back to that original, if we go back to the PowerPoint here, so you just draw some shapes, and notice that this plus sign will be our vanishing point. And let's make it a little bigger here. So then, and then you'll add converging lines. So we have these converging lines from those shapes. And then notice there's also a horizon line in here. But the horizon line is not going to go through this shape because this shape is in front of that horizon line. So then we have these shapes just all going back. And then you can add some more shapes if you want. And then remember, don't draw lines in front. So like you don't want to, so like you'll end up erasing this blue line here so that it doesn't show. And then you can add some color to it and some value. So color to the faces of the shapes and value to those parts. And it just makes like we created a huge amount of space here. Like these objects are going really far back, like they're really big objects. You could also stop the objects too by drawing a parallel line here, and then they would just have like that shape. So again, that's something that you can do on paper, and then you can put it in this file here. So into here you can insert it in, so you can draw on paper, or you can do it digitally, and then or you can search for one and submit the photo into the box here. So the next thing we'll be looking at is atmospheric perspective. So atmospheric perspective is really looking through the atmosphere. So when we look at this part of the mountain here, this is the part closest to us, and then it goes farther back, and then farther back over here as well. And then you can see this part that's really farther back, and this over here looks farther. But then as we look through more atmosphere, more sky, there's water in the atmosphere. That's like something that we're breathing in as air, and we're also breathing in water droplets as well. But we have like, as it goes back, it creates a, what we call an atmosphere. So we're looking through the atmosphere, and when we look through the atmosphere, things go farther and farther. Like things that are farther and farther back, they get, we can't see the details of them, and they look lighter and lighter and lighter. Another example, so you can see how this would be closest to us, the next thing, the next one, then farther back, farther back, farther back as it goes back into the screen. And then people do this in art as well. So we have this image here, we have this stream going back, but what we see is there's a lot of details in the rock here, But then as it goes back, these get lighter and lighter and lighter, and you can even see that stream really far back there, and the rocks are really light. Um, so um, if we think of atmospheric perspective, so something that, again, we're looking through atmosphere, now we can also look at scale and proportion. So scale and proportion is talking about how the size of something is or how the size of something should be. So when we see this room, the room, we look at the space and we're like, oh, like that bed, this armoire or chest or whatever you want to call it, and these rugs, they all seem normal. But then when you look at these other shapes like the comb, the glass, and these other things for makeup, they end up being so out of scale. So we're confused by this. So something that we can also look at, and an artist can make an object look monstrously huge. And this huge object, because this is a matchbook, this huge object, seems even bigger to us because of they're playing with the scale. And this one too, we think about scale and proportion. This is a very tiny work actually. We can see that it's 1 inch by 5 and 5/8 inches. So it's 1 inch this direction and then 5 and 5/8 inches this direction. There's a ton of detail in there, but it's a really small work of art. So when we mess with hierarchical scale, we're talking about things that are larger, they seem more important. So for Egyptians, gods were more important, so they made the gods bigger than other people. And then if we look in this one, we see that, so this is Madonna in the church. So this is Mary with Jesus, and they're so tall in the church because they're so important. So notice how much larger they are in the church than these people in the background here. We can also mess with a distorting scale. So distorting scale would be you have these kids, but then look how large this this plant is. Human proportions. So when we distort human proportions, like for this one, the proportions of the person aren't the same as what we would expect, meaning a bigger head, a shorter body. Notice the bigger feet. Or ideal proportion, we can talk about. So these aren't, I mean, these are supposed to be real people, but the idea is that they have an ideal proportion. So these are idealized, or they're made to think that it's like the best proportions of people. So what we'll do for this next part is we're going to create an outdoor space, and then we'll get some objects. And these objects, you can just place them on. You don't ever necessarily have to glue them on. And if we go back to our document here, so we talked about the different types of things. So now you're going to use drawing or color pencils to draw an outdoor space. So think of atmospheric perspective. The top and the bottom of the page are closer to you. And then you can even put in a horizon line for atmospheric perspective. And then you'll cut out some objects of varying scale, so varying size. And we're just going to play with people's perceptions of what that scale and proportion are. So those are the two things that you'll be doing for the just to get ready for this project. And then once you do that, we'll be looking at the project details here. So Surrealism, what we did for a draw now yesterday, is a 20th century avant-garde art movement. And it's trying to look at the creative potential of our unconscious mind. So that's why I referred to as dreams. So dreams are an unconscious mind. But the term surreal refers to a quality beyond the rational. So it's a hyper reality. So when you think of dreams, you're thinking of how my dreams seem so real, but then you pair them with dissimilar elements. So things that, like, where I can fly in a dream, it's like, well, I can't do that in real life, but it seems so real. Juxtaposition is taking two things that are being seen or placed close together with contrasting effect. So what that would mean is, like if you have two things that are opposites of each other next to each other. So think of the last project that we did. That would be juxtaposition. So you're taking those two things, putting them close together, but having some sort of thing that contrasts them. So let's go back to our and let's look at some of these things. So we can see atmosphere as in lighter to darker as it goes back in this case. If we look at this next work, we're more familiar with something like this. So the surrealism here, we see this atmosphere blue to white, And then also you can see that this ends up being like a water, but even dark to light as it goes back. And light can be a helper for that. Um, we also see like these melting clocks and then this weird thing down here. But those melting clocks and this idea of time, we're thinking of our perception of time. So we can also have things like lips in the sky, like that's like we think of that juxtaposing with this landscape. So juxtaposition would be like these lips in the sky. It's like those are contrasting things. Lips aren't in the sky or even that size. So when we think of surrealism, this is probably the best image that I can give for us to be like, what is surrealism? So it looks like it's a sky in the background. You're like, well, that could just be wallpaper. But then we have this huge comb, this cup, and these makeup elements, and that's what makes this seem like a real space. We even see shadows of things. We see like shadows on the bed here. But then these other elements, they seem almost like they're fake because they're so massive. So these are the things that we talked about on the page already, or on the document, the Google document. So with atmospheric perspective, you could be making something that's atmospheric perspective. So think of this, where we have atmosphere. So you could do an atmospheric perspective and then put different things in here. You could put like a large person, or maybe it's just an eye over the horizon. Would be juxtaposing the eye, the size of the eye with the space that you create. Or you could do something linear perspective. It could be an outdoor space where you see like a road, or you can see, in this case, like a courtyard of an area. It could be in an interior space, like if we go back to this one, where we have our vanishing point would be in the center, and all of these lines that go away from it, they all go to that center point. So if you just follow the cursor, they're all going to that center point. And then these lines are just going to be the back wall, but then all the other lines are going to converge to there. Even on the bed, those lines all converge, and our eyes just automatically see this. Even like that part of the chest of drawers even comes down to this vanishing point right here in the center. All right, so and then these are just some more works. Notice how odd and crazy some of these things are, some of these works. You can look up surrealism and also get some more images of what surrealism can be. Again, we're trying to make something look real, but unsettling at the same time. This one's interesting. We have this person with a head and a beard, and then like in the beard is another head, and then in that beard is another head, and then in that beard you can see another head, and then there's probably another beard and a head there. So pretty wild stuff. This person picking up this huge urn, dumping all the water for coming out there. Pretty crazy ideas. What's under the earth is kind of what this one's looking at. Maybe some sort of ascension into the sun, it appears. Then some person in a suit. That's a juxtaposition of this person in a suit with all these other bodies tend to be naked in this poem. Some sort of things are melting or growing then you have like the structure that seems pretty real. And the atmospheric perspective in the background. The work that we already just looked at. So what you can think about is, are you going to make an interior space or exterior space? Is it going to be linear perspective or atmospheric? And I'm just going to skip ahead to a lot of works here. Oh, just some student work. So an interior space, we see that there's a person playing with this dollhouse type thing. So it's almost like 3 levels of people playing with this dollhouse. This one we have an interior space that's being broken open. So they're kind of on an island. They did a collage for this one. This one, less as intense surrealism as much as it's kind of like a dream-like thing. So maybe somebody who's on the edge of this thing in a dream. And you can think about it too, like you can have it to just be a dream. This person cut out pictures of kids that they were babysitting, and then they made these then they put like their big foot in there, so you can still see this dog right here too, but then the kids are tiny. So that's the change in the scale. This one we have brains for clouds, so it just can be an atmospheric perspective right here. So blue to purplish white to white. And then you have these brains for clouds. So let's go back to, so we want to be thinking about collecting some images. So some of those things they cut out, and then also they painted or they drew. And then these are the other elements that we have. And all of this is on that paper. So really just at least an 8.5 by 11, anything we've used so far. And the final due date is going to be on June 3rd. So you'll have this due in a couple days. So this will be on actually Thursday. So Thursday at midnight. And then from Friday to next Thursday, I'll have you do a progress one, and then the final one will be due. Kind of like how we did the last project. And you can read through the rubric too for further information there. All right, so if you have questions, make sure to let me know. Here's some more works that if you want to look at these, or you can just end the video right now. So we have some cows in here instead of in the ice cream cones out there, instead of cows out there and ice cream in here, corn in the Pepsi thing, and then you have Pepsi bottles for the corn. Something somebody was thinking about, some a sane asylum, an outdoor space. What would have made this one better is actually making this road to be vanishing off there. So that's one critique about this one. They did make things realistic. They did have some perspective here being used, but it definitely, like, even that river should have gone maybe a little bit thinner, but that road definitely could have been smaller. And notice the words there too make the space go back. And then some even odder things. This person traced some stuff that were in a book and then they pasted them on. So that's also an option as well. All right, so I hope you're all doing well. Let me know if you have any questions on the project. And if you need to, you can always rewatch the video if you have a question on something. I'll talk to you later. Bye.